right, today is the 3rd of November, 2 o'clock. Youth negotiations in the city of Fort Orange. You want people to introduce themselves for the tape?
Sure.
Let's do it. I'm Wayne Helsby. I'm the chief negotiator for the city of Fort Orange.
Matt Jones, City Attorney, Fort Orange.
Jamie Miller, Administrative Services Director.
Warren Carmen, board member.
Jared Alvasados, Vice President.
Greg Cook, business agent for IEPA.
Ted Kurtz, treasurer.
Jeremy Bird, Secretary.
Gary Wilson, attorney for IEPA.
Justin White, president.
Heather Carrizales, HR Manager, City of Fort Orange.
And Wayne, just for the record, I just wanted to state that the chief wanted to make the meeting here today. He's prepping for arbitration, so he's not going to be able to make it.
So I guess as you and I talked this morning for briefly, you've got some proposals for us today. Want to just go through those?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you're all welcome. Okay.
Awesome. I guess we can share. Heather, unless you don't want to look over my shoulder.
Go right ahead.
Okay. We were still working on this morning. I want to first thank Justin and his team for putting a lot of effort into this. What we did was we took the expired Central Florida PBA contract, used it somewhat of a model. This is wait till Jim, so
She's just going to run a couple copies for us.
okay. I can wait till she gets back then. It's from the firefighters contract. Yeah, I can say that. These are I know they didn't match up exactly.
Good where it is there. Scary. I was happy I wasn't at you, Jared. Thanks.
Oh, that's all right. Got it all in you.
Yeah.
This is help the IA go faster, for your protection.
We good?
As an overview, let me just back up again and tell you kind of where we are and how we arrived at what you have in front of you.
Okay.
Again, Justin and his team, contract negotiation team did a great job. What we did was we took the Central Florida PBA contract, used it as a working model, and then from there, we've proposed some revised language to certain articles in that contract. There's 7 articles that we don't believe are really ready or ripe to discuss today, just because there's some few things that we still need to look at. And again, these are from the old contract. One was management rights, Article 5, because we believe that obviously should come from your side of the table. The other is Article 10, insurance, Article 12, the retirement plan, Article 16, annual leave, Article 17, sick leave, Article 31, alcohol and drug testing, and 32, health, safety, and physical fitness. And some of those are when we do propose those, I would think in the next session after today, won't be drastic changes, but there's some things we need to get clarified, including today, such as I understand you're on a 2-tier system, or you were on leave calculation under the old contract, and we need to hear from you since we are displacing a union. Does the city even still want that 2-tier system? If they don't, that may affect our position on approaching some of those articles. But the articles minus those 7 are the ones you have in front of you. We could go through them page by page if you would like.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I can tell you in response to your question about the leave, the 2-tier system.
Yeah.
We do still have that. As you know, that's a complicated matter to try to convert from a 2-tiered system to all personal leave. You know, I'm sure you've negotiated that before, and I have too. And it can be done, but it's not easy. You know, you can't just do hour for hour. So we're willing to talk about that.
Okay.
But in the interest of trying to get things done and do it fairly expeditiously, I don't want it to bog us down. So we're not foreclosing the possibility, because we have done it we did it with Nage, I think. And so it can be done, but it is, as I'm sure you know, because people have different accruals and, you know, amounts that they get paid out upon leaving, and it affects their pension, all kinds of things. So again, I'm not foreclosing the idea of talking about it, but I just don't want it to get to a point where it really bogs us down. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Or are you saying, Wayne, you think the city wants to maintain the 2-tier system?
Well,
rather than try to come up with something?
we probably would prefer to convert, just to be consistent, to be honest with you. But again, it's not easy, especially in this context. So if you want, we could maybe propose something, or at least talk about proposing something,
Yeah.
to see if you want
Okay.
to at least entertain the idea
Sure,
and try to work. Okay, well, let's talk about that then.
Okay. And I think near the end is when we'll get the wages, which I'm not sure what article number the wages is, but we can just go from cover to cover and, or we
And
can,
that's fine. I just have a question for you
Yeah.
before you begin, though. I see a lot of colors here, some yellow and blue and red and stuff. So is there a color code, or?
The red is what's been stricken out. You'll see a line through it. Blue is what's just been added to the.
Hang on a second, I'm sorry. So
Oh,
red
the
is,
highlighted part is, City Human Resource Director, is that still a title, a working title? So I didn't know that, so that's why I highlighted it. So it's probably something we need to change.
So highlights are what you have questions on?
Yes.
Okay.
Reds are
That's good.
redactions and blues
Reds are redactions from the previous PBA contract?
Correct.
So we see something red and it's
Line
either,
through.
it's line through, it's taken out of the old contract.
And blue is proposed new language. So even though we didn't, in the preamble portion here on page 1, we didn't red line or blue line the name of the union, obviously in the first paragraph you see that, just identifying OPA 6051. Article 1, the next page, page 2, we have no proposed changes, as you can see. And at any point, just stop if you have questions.
And just for clarification, point that Human Resources Director was the old verbiage. It would now be
and that's,
Administrative Services Director,
is that
or
what it is now?
Human Resources Department would now be the Human Resources Division. So,
Okay,
Okay, yeah, I just wanted clear
Yep,
language.
just so we can,
that's a good segue to the next page, page 3. So where City Human Resources Director is highlighted, Jamie, you're saying that should now be what?
Administrative Services Director.
Administrative Services Director, okay? So if you guys would just make that change on your own copy. So
I have a
those,
question for you,
Yes.
Gary,
uh-huh,
and this is maybe a lawyer to lawyer. 1.1, I looked at the old contract a while ago. That last sentence, any amendment to the bargaining unit certified PERC will be entitled to the terms and benefits of this agreement. Maybe this is just semantics, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me what's said there. I think what they meant to say is if there's some position that's added to the bargaining unit, the
Right.
parties have to go to PERC and get a unit clarification petition. Once it's clarified by PERC and ordered, then the position is entitled to the terms and benefits of the agreement. Is that your interpretation of it?
yes, yeah, it probably, I don't disagree with you, it could be wordsmith to say that, something like, and even the amendment, just be it.
Yeah, something different that it just doesn't make a lot of sense, but okay. I may
I'm making a note.
try to
here.
massage something.
Okay. And we can send this to you in Word format.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, Justin.
Yep.
Minus these articles, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then on Article 3, point 2, dues deduction. Justin, this highlighted language here, is this again for clarification?
Oh, yeah, that one. That didn't mean to highlight that one. The big paragraph's not highlighted.
Okay, 3.2, disregard the highlighting there. There is some changes though in 3.3, as you will see. And
Is
again,
that, without reading it in any great length, is that just a clarification or is
It's
that?
just cleaning up the language and adding calendar days, because it just said 30 days. So it's just giving more of a clearer picture and cleaning up some of the language on the cancellation.
One thing we might want to consider doing, I don't know if this contract's got it in there, but there may, some of the contracts I do just have a blanket deal about, when you say days, it means calendar days or working days, unless otherwise specified. That way you don't have to keep repeating it. Just an idea.
yeah, I think somewhere in here, I thought there was a
So
definition of
there's working days,
working days.
one of the later.
so,
They don't look the same.
yeah, I'm concerned that the 2 copies we got aren't the same copies, because we don't have highlights in 3.2. But my highlights went through, so it's not a
Oh,
matter
that's probably the one, I deleted the highlight on 3.2 on my copies.
Okay.
And Gary had the old.
I guess I had.
Gotcha.
They're the
Okay, I
same.
just want to make
It's
sure
just that one
everything else
paragraph.
is the
Yep.
same that we were
Okay.
working off of.
It's just that one paragraph.
And again, certainly ask questions as we go through this. If you need time, we're not expecting you to answer definitively with a yes, you accept, or no, you don't, unless you're ready to do that, since you're just seeing this for the first time. Article 4 Bulletin Board you should have several strike throughs and some language, more or less to clean up just some of the verbiage. We are proposing striking 4.3.
I have a question for you. This is just a global question. Are bulletin boards even necessary anymore? I've been negotiating a lot of contracts lately where it's like, well, why do we even have a bulletin board? Everything's electronic. You know, you send notices, you put stuff to emails and all that. So I've got some contracts now that don't even bother with these bulletin boards. So it's just a question. I don't know whether
Yeah.
we still have them, need them, you know. doesn't
We
make
still
any
do
sense.
post on the board, people do see the postings, because it's right by the mailboxes. Yeah, so
What do you all post? Just meeting
upcoming
notices and
meetings,
stuff like that?
Meeting notices and
But
stuff.
don't you do that electronically too?
We still have members that don't use
Yeah.
social media.
Or emails or anything like that? Text messages?
Getting people to check their emails.
I mean, maybe that's true. I'm not trying to be.
We have some old school cops.
All right. I just, okay. Seems like even at my
Yeah.
age, I'm getting technologically somewhat savvy. I just didn't know it was necessary. So, all right. We'll look at that.
Next page, page 9, which was Article 6, there is a proposed sentence that we would hope wouldn't be objected to. It's more or less a statement of anti-discrimination.
I do have a question on that. So,
Okay.
is there a reason why we need to repeat in a collective bargaining agreement something that's guaranteed by statute? I'm generally opposed to that. And it's not the concept, it's just that it's guaranteed by statute. So why do you need to repeat it in a contract? It really doesn't make any sense to me.
I understand. I think rank and file people like to see it in writing. It gives them a peace of mind. There's some believe if it's not in writing, is it really there? Is it?
It's in writing, it's in a statute book.
Well-
All I gotta do is go to, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you guys can think about it. I mean, this.
I don't know, it just seems to me that I'm a fan of less verbiage as necessary. I mean, if there's something that's guaranteed by statute, I just don't see the need to repeat it in the contract. Not the concept's fine, but, you know, if you're putting in a contract something that says these are the rights guaranteed by Florida statute, well, it's guaranteed by statute, so why put it in the contract?
Not to point any fingers at certainly your side of the table, but I think these men, I don't think there's any ladies here on our side of the table. These men will probably tell you they've had experiences with the upper management of the police department in Port Orange to where if it were in writing like this, they would have more peace of mind because I'm not sure some of the rank and file know that this is the law.
Well,
And that's just from personal experience and representing some officers over here.
Understood. Well, you may see an effort on our part just to be upfront with you that whatever proposals we give to you in response may not include references to statutes for that reason. Just
We
to
understand.
give you a heads up.
We may have to bargain over that. And I think 6.2 was just you.
Just, we don't know article.
Yeah, we don't know what article it's going to be. Article 7, no proposed changes. It references the Officer Bill of Rights. Again, that's another thing that was in the prior contract. It is by law, but again, I think when management knows it's there, they might be more inclined to follow it and adhere to it. So
Probably going to be another example, by the way. You know, the law enforcement officer bill of rights is what it is. It's in statutes. It's got a enforcement mechanism. So I don't see
if
any
the
need-
city has lived with it like this for years, why would they not want it in there now? Other than,
Again, I'm just a fan. I'm not
Yeah.
having things
Yeah.
repeated in a contract that are guaranteed by law. So
But you can, correct me if I'm wrong, you can also agree through the contract if the contract violation and violate the Officer Bill of Rights, correct?
in the existing PGA agreement or the old one, I guess, I suppose you could, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's enforcement mechanisms in the law enforcement officer's bill of rights.
Without
If-
any
if-
teeth.
without any teeth. The reason being, it used to be you could go get an injunction. Now all you can do, Wayne, as you, I believe you would know, is all you can do is call a timeout during an IA
You can
And
remove
say-
the IA.
and say, you're
officer.
violating my rights.
Yeah.
And if the investigator continues, you can call a timeout. You got 3 days to file a written notice to the agency head.
Mhm.
It's a whole rigmarole. You can't even, it has no teeth. There's no monetary damages. There's no sanctions. You can't even go to court and get an injunction. So-
Well, I would disagree with that, but I think that does have some teeth. You can stop the investigation, remove the IA officer, you can replace him with somebody different. You can.
That's if the agency head agrees with you. If they agree that you've raised a valid issue. If the chief, for example, says, I hear your side of it. I don't think my IA investigators violated your rights. Continue on with the IA. Then you've got to have a personnel board hearing and comprise one and present your case, make a convincing argument. I mean, I agree with Greg on this, that in contract, it keeps everybody honest. It's something you can grieve. And again, the city has lived with this verbiage. I don't know why they would want it out now, except that this is a new union and we don't.
Well, it just seems to me that you've already got guarantees pursuant to a statute that has an enforcement mechanism. So including it in a contract gives you a second bite at the apple. And it affords an arbitrator the ability to say, you didn't follow the statute, so therefore everything's void. So
I can't think of a law enforcement agency that I represent, that includes Orange County Corrections for many years, that does not codify and recognize the officer bill of rights in the collective bargaining agreement.
you can reference some of the contracts that I've negotiated.
Well, I'd like to also ask that, is it the city's position that the sergeant and officers don't have this provision and protection in the contract like the lieutenants do?
Because the lieutenants have this.
We're not negotiating for the lieutenants. I mean, that's a whole separate.
Well, I know, but I mean, this is something that the people that you have that are putting in for positions here, we're down a bunch of officers. Something that people need to know, hey, we're not going to have just cause in the contract. We don't want the police officer bill of rights in the contract. So I think it's imperative that the officers that we've hired now under the old contract at least know, hey, this is where we're going to go. And it needs to be something that's brought out in the open so that everybody can make an informed decision.
Well, we're negotiating this contract, and for the positions that are included in this bargaining agreement,
Okay.
that's our position, yes.
The city
Lieutenants
position.
are a whole separate matter.
Okay.
Are you stating the city's official position or just your own position on it right
It's
now?
the city's official position.
Okay.
Well, I think I just got lost. So to be clear, the city does not want to put the Bill of Rights in the contract.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Mr. Helvey, is that from the council? Is that from the city manager?
Oh, this is the bargaining team, and the bargaining team is representative of the city manager as the CEO. He assembles the bargaining team.
Yes.
We do have consultations with city council. Those are private, though. Those discussions are not open to the public. And so it's the position of the bargaining team, who's representative of the city manager. That's our position.
Well, our position is strongly the other way, obviously.
Understood.
And again, we'll note for the record that the lieutenants have it in their contract. Article 8, wages. You can take time to read this. We obviously don't expect an answer today. We are suggesting that the starting pay for officers rise to the level of $20 an hour. I've given you, Wayne, a sheet, and I know you're very aware of what some of these, you and I sat across the table at New Smyrna Beach. They are now at $20.46 starting pay. Daytona Beach is at $20.59, and then you have the other agencies listed here, several of whom these are new contracts, New Smyrna Beach and Daytona Beach. The Volusia County Sheriff's Office, I just completed an MOU with to get us past January 5th when Sheriff Chitwood becomes an independent constitutional officer, went to 1967, but they're going to then go immediately into contract negotiations. And the Sheriff's Office has a $7,000 recruitment package, and he is specifically looking at 3 to 5 year officers around the county. So there's going to be some poaching going on. You're already down some officers, as you've heard Greg say. We think $20 just puts you in the market, keeps you somewhat competitive, but again, it's still below New Smyrna and still below Daytona and even a couple of others that are listed here. From there, Justin and his team did a percentage incremental raise. I think from years 1 to 4, was it 1.5%? And then for a 5-year officer, I think it goes up to 5%. 5%. And then I believe that it remains that way for, and then 1.5 for 6 through 9. Is that right?
5 and 10.
And then another 5% at 10 years. The goal being to avoid the compression that often happens when you raise just the bottom starting salary. And then the officers that have been here working, they end up getting pinched a little bit. So we believe that this is a pay scale proposal that we think would make Port Orange competitive in the salary market. How many officers are they down right now? Do I know here?
They got a bunch they hired for school, but they're not sworn yet, so I think what he.
15's the number, I think.
SRO types.
Of that
School, did you say school?
They haven't been
15,
certified yet, they're not sworn.
but I think we hired like 2 or
CSOs.
3 to go to
14 down out of a department of how many?
90.
So almost about 20% down almost. And I'm not telling you, Greg and I have been negotiating all over Volusia County. It seems like all these contracts are coming up now. I'm not telling you anything that any of us don't know when you turn on the TV and see the riots in some of the big cities. You see the anti-police movement by some pretty radical groups. It's going to get harder and harder to hire men and women into law enforcement. It's already hard. The academy was closed during COVID. You've got a sheriff, as I mentioned, who's down 40-something deputies and is aggressively hiring and offering a cash award. So unless the city wants to be really playing catch up, and I don't think your council wants it, and I bet your council doesn't even know this, but they will. They need to know this kind of information. They need to know it. And I think your council, from what I hear, are pretty pro-police. Thankfully, knock on wood, we're not in a defund police environment here in our state. And I hope we never get to it. But it's real out there. It's real. They're having, the people that are hiring, I'm hearing from other Volusia County agencies are saying the candidate pool they're getting is down in quality. They're having to look into backgrounds of people that have police records. They're applying for police jobs now. So the quality of people even going into the pipeline to be law enforcement is getting harder and harder. So again, we think this is a very fair proposal. Frankly, even coming in a little higher would have been, I think, warranted, but we think $20 starting pay, there's something psychological to get to 20, I think, puts you in a decent position. And we think it would make Port Orange somewhat competitive. So you will see that the rest of the changes, proposed changes in Article 8.1 all the way to 8.4 are pretty insignificant or none. 8.5, we are proposing that employees promoted to the rank of sergeant after their 15th year of service shall fall into the first time in grade that is higher than their base pay. And then you'll see a scale proposed under 8.6 that proposes adding 5% to their base pay rate for a motorcycle officer, emergency response team, traffic homicide, K-9. We are proposing, I guess, a field training officer position.
Field training officer was there, but it was not in the old contract.
Okay.
They're already one of the special positions.
And then same with range master and crime suppression team.
Range master's new, the crime suppression team was also in there. They just weren't ever added to the old contract.
So just to be clear, these ones in blue are positions that,
The only one that's in blue is the range master.
That's the only
That's
new
the
one.
new one.
that's a new one,
Yes.
but the crime suppression team was
It was,
in existence already,
There
just
was an
wasn't in the old
MOU.
contract.
yeah, there's an MOU that was
Okay.
signed, but they never added it.
And you had FTOs.
Yes, and FTOs, I don't know why they weren't, but they're getting specialty pay.
So Gary, I think I know the answer to this, but this is again you use the old PBA contract as a template for this, so that
Right.
the proposal that you have on 8.1, the pay scale is all, it's obviously different from the old contract. So this is the new, it should.
Yeah, this is all new numbers.
Yeah, they're not red.
It was
That's what-
1801.
It should be in red, I guess is my point.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's all new, right?
It should all be blue.
No knock on anybody, it's just,
Right.
this is.
Yeah, the current starting pay is 1801, I believe.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So all of these numbers reflect literally starting,
Got it.
just selecting $20 based on comparable data, and then going up 1.5% from years 2 through 4,
Yeah.
5% jump at year 5, 1.5 from 6 to 9, and then a 5% again at year 10. And that's to reward longevity benchmarks, to hopefully keep officers here.
And I haven't read through this entirely, maybe it's self-evident. Is this a one-year proposal or multi-year?
The wages,
The whole contract?
we would like to do a 3-year contract, but we're open to openers and maybe go 1 or 2 and 3 on wages.
All righty, we'll take a look at this.
Okay.
Any questions from anybody else on that?
Article 9, hours of work overtime and voluntary special event work. No proposed changes for the first 7 sub-articles. When you get to 9.8, there is a new proposed additional sentence, page 15, to ensure fairness to the distribution of mandated overtime, a call-out wheel shall be established and maintained by the shift lieutenants. Justin, is your team, is that just to make it equitable in the
Yeah, that's-
distribution of?
It's already in policy. The issue has come up in the past, but with it being a policy and not in contract, we weren't able to grieve it. So that's in contract. We can-
This is probably a very stupid question, but bear with me. Can you explain to me what a call-out wheel is?
Yes, so if we're all on a shift and they call Carmen in because he's the next on top of the list, so we mandate him in. Once he comes in, he goes to the bottom of the list.
Okay.
And then Jared moves up to the
All
top.
right, I just had never
Yeah.
heard it called a.
That's what it is in
Wheel.
policy. So
that's the verbiage. you
that's the
got.
verbiage I got out of
Okay.
policy. So.
Thank you.
And then is that the same for 9.15 on the next page? Is that out of policy?
No, that was an old,
It's a separate article.
that was a separate article.
Okay.
It was voluntary special event work. We just put it under the same for overtime, assault related overtime.
So this is moving it from verbiage from a prior.
Yes, article to a new one, to the
9.15 is the way you do it now, you run through payroll.
And I guess 16 and 17 on the next page too.
Is that right?
Okay. Article 11, physical exam, workers' comp. You can see there's no proposed changes there.
like a fire.
That's the
I think like a battery backup.
Okay.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Is the building on fire?
Probably doing a generator test like they do
Oh.
with BB.
Oh, okay.
As long as we're not under a fire alarm.
Get out of the building.
It sounds like,
No, there's no mistake to a fire alarm.
Oh, yeah, there.
That thing goes
Don't make your ears
That
fall.
is- The battery backup's on the computer.
Rattle your head.
You want me to, we'll just hold off.
she got it. No, she didn't.
Yeah.
You all do a lot of off-duty stuff here.
We used to, but not,
9/1.
we don't have any very many special details.
Who do you compete with for
The state sheriff,
of the state?
yeah. They just had a traffic detail on Taylor and Williamson is,
They've
That
still
doesn't
got-
see.
You mean like FHQ?
FWC. So they stole our detail right out of the city.
Being shorthanded, it's hard to get people to do it.
They still working by Star too?
So, yeah.
It's a state contract, I guess.
Every day there's state law enforcement there.
Well, the next one, Article 13, there's only an addition to 13.1, and that's with a concealed vest carrier and a load-bearing external vest carrier. Justin or anyone on our team, has this already been discussed with the chief?
It has been discussed and they're in the process of possibly implementing So it's just the addition to the uniform that they provide. We already get the concealed vest carrier. That's the one that goes under your uniform. And I think they're T&E and the load bearing vests. So once that gets approved, it should be good to go.
Article 14, I'm sorry.
In 13.5.
Yeah.
At the top of the page. Is it the intent to change it from 750 to 1,000 or?
Sorry, back on the pay.
No.
Clothing allowance. It says 7.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the detectives did want, sorry, I forgot.
That's
to
okay, I
highlight
just
that.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, they did want the 750 should be in red, lined out, and the 1,000 is in blue. Thank you, Jamie.
Inflation.
See how nice we are? We could have just overlooked that and figured it was 750. But it was, it was 1,000. Jamie's being nice.
1750. we like that.
Article 14 is on authorized use of private automobiles, no proposed changes there, even in the monetary amounts mentioned in 14.3. Article 15 is on holidays. The union's proposal is to add Veterans Day and MLK Day. I believe you were telling me on the phone, is MLK already?
It was a floating holiday. That's what's lined out now as well.
Back to 14. So
sorry.
go back to 14.
Yeah, sure.
I think those thresholds have been updated since.
For insurance?
Yeah, that 100 I think is a 200 now.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
So 200 for that?
Are you pretty sure you want to check it? We'll confirm it? I'll
Yeah,
just
I'll
circle it.
confirm it. Just circle that. And
Okay.
I think those were updated. When it says required by law in quotes, I think they're talking about the
Yeah.
statutory caps.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't be opposed to just saying to the statutory applicable limit. if
We
we
could do something like
want.
that. So as it adjusts, we can make sure that.
Yeah.
I think that's the intent there.
Okay, make
Do you
it-
guys have a situation where you drive personal vehicles?
Or we just, get rid of it all.
Wait, what is
together.
that?
I don't even know why it's
Relevant
there.
to the-
Does that count like driving to school? I mean, what is it? That's.
This is when you're driving your personal
For like work
vehicle.
purposes?
Does anybody do that in your?
Not
I've
that I'm
never
aware
seen
of. Not that I'm aware
I
of.
don't, I think policy says they're not allowed to drive a personal vehicle.
So is this something that's not even really being used right now?
We don't know of any.
I mean, unless it includes like driving to and from the academy, but because if you drive your personal car to and from the academy, then that, you're on the clock.
Would you
I
use?
don't know if they're using it for court either.
But,
They're
yeah,
responding to subpoenas, they might be using their personal vehicle.
so, yeah, I go to court in my personal vehicle, sometimes I have something else to do.
Right,
you-
you got
you
something to
submit
do
your
after.
miles?
No.
That's
The
not
clerk
good
of
for
court
me.
pays the mileage, you do a mileage sheet, and then they reimburse you.
I think that I think the only time this would come to be an issue is when we were lax on vehicles to use. And I know there was a time when the police department was sharing vehicles, so I know certain officers didn't have access to a constant primary vehicle. So it could basically be old language from that where they gave the ability, you had to use your personal vehicle because you weren't afforded the opportunity to use a police vehicle.
To go to
But
court?
we are asked to use the police vehicle for school events, court events, even out of county travel. I know that they will bypass it, but they'll still issue you a police vehicle to utilize for that event.
So maybe just one to think about.
Do we want to
whether we
set this
can
one
do that.
aside and both sides? look
I've
at
never
what-
seen it in a contract.
I think before.
There must have been a reason PBA had it in. for
I think
years.
prior to any of our time, that guys used to have to switch cars like in their zone. They would have to meet at a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah, the hot switch. Or
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll set 14 aside and maybe both sides look at this and we can talk about whether it's even necessary. Okay, on 15, again, we're talking about holidays. I guess the only major addition, or I guess MLK is going from a floating holiday to an actual holiday is the proposal, along with Veterans Day, which would increase the holidays from 7 to 9.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this was already approved in the league, wasn't it, for the lieutenants?
I don't know.
Yes, of course.
Not quite.
Not exactly that.
Similar,
Okay.
but not quite.
Bereavement leave, Article 18, no proposed changes there. And obviously, these article numbers may change, like if we do away with that personal automobile article, but for today's purposes. Leave of absence, Article 19, no proposed changes there. Same with educational leave on Article 20. Military leave, Article 21. And then jury duty on Article 22. Training and reimbursement, tuition reimbursement, training to no proposed changes on Article 23. Article 24, probationary employees, no proposed changes. We understand there's some references in 24.2 and 24.4 to 9.1. Obviously, that may change if the numbering changes, but same with the reference to Article 8 at the end of 24.1. Article 25, seniority. There's only one proposed addition at the end of that article, which is on the very next page. It says in the event of a vacancy in any division or unit, non-promotional vacancy within the office, seniority will be considered along with skills, abilities, and the requirements of the job.
Those like specialty units on that?
Yes. Like detective, canine,
Right.
motors.
So right now, seniority is not considered, or it's?
It is in policy, just not here.
Okay, so this is again a reflection of policy. Article 26, promotional procedures. The only thing being wordsmithed a little in 26.1 is just changing some words. There's no real major substantive change. I don't think you'll see. The first major change is on the 26.3 and making it a application, or I'm sorry, the ability to be promoted, you have to now have 7 years or 5 years with a bachelor's degree. Obviously, that probably benefits management in that you're going to have a more seasoned officer before he or she is eligible to be considered for promotion. There's a couple words on 26.3 you'll see on the next page in blue, intent to take the exam. Were those just words that were needed for clarification? And the only other, change too is the next page, page 48, is lowering the written exam passage from 70 to 65%.
Any particular reason for that? Is it your applicant pool just not sufficient?
I don't know if that's the membership on it.
Just curious.
Anybody else have any comments?
Same with the years of service,
Yeah, the membership wanted the years of service and the
just
the
for the
lower
record,
test
so
score.
The
they didn't come from
I think
us,
the
they
applicant
came
pool
from
was
us.
low last test.
I mean, usually that's the reason why you
It was a low.
relax the standards.
Yeah, there was, I think there was only,
11 out of 30 something.
yeah, it's like a
It's
third.
challenging because in one way you're raising the standard and one way you're
Right.
lowering it, so.
They were raising the experience standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the experience was a big deal. A lot of the membership, the basic idea was that the written exam counted for so much that you had people that maybe weren't qualified or didn't have the experience necessary to be promoted, but they test well. And that was something the membership basically said, we would like more towards seniority rather than taking a test, which doesn't show much more than you can take a test.
Yeah, I get it. Sounds like the bar exam.
One test for your.
You pass the bar exam and you can be a good lawyer.
Yeah.
First for last. It's the-
Yeah. Then the last section of this article is on page 50 there for you. The idea was just taking out the social security number and names and just going with last name.
Is that the direction you guys were going already?
Yeah, we
I couldn't remember. I tried it.
publishing the list by,
Yeah,
That's just.
I think we might have even struck it all together, I don't recall.
So, Article 27, no proposed changes there. Why don't we skip Article 28, because I feel like that's where we'll spend the bulk of our probably remaining time talking, and just set it aside. But there's only a couple more after this. Yeah. 29 is, oh. Yeah, we'll skip 28 and 29 for just a moment. 30, personnel records. You know, we're striking at his own expense in hopes that the city would provide, if someone requests a copy of their file, they would have to pay for it. But that's what that represents. 30.2 is a new proposed, some language. Does this come out of policy?
no, it's just pretty much mirrors this, but it's the file that's at the police department. They can keep two separate files on this. One that's at HR, one that's at the police department.
So this is really more or less allowing, you know, what a public employee or a member of the public can come and review their file. 33, the only word being proposed, struck there is the word stewards in 33.2. And then, Wayne, I think this next article is where we talk about, instead of 7 days, 10 working days.
Yeah, we might just be better off where we agree on working days, you know, just say work, and if it's not otherwise working the calendar or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm open to that. I just don't know if
I don't think we're wedded one way or the other. There was one we did work on the other day. We just said go with 14 calendar days wherever, but 10 working days is pretty much the equivalent of 14 calendar days.
I'm all about clarity, so there's no reason to have some dispute about whether it's calendar or work, so I can insert it in this one.
And then 35, severability, no change. 36, duration of agreement, no change. 37, entire agreement, no change. And 38. So I guess the main two we would want to spend just a little bit of time talking about is the disciplinary action article and the grievance article. And we'll just share with you our position on it. At page 52, disciplinary action, we're suggesting something that I presume would not be an issue, and that's upon request, an employee can get a copy of any statement which he has given to the city or the department in connection with an investigation. We know that under the Officer Bill of Rights, they have a right to get a copy prior to being questioned. But this is for situations that don't involve necessarily an investigative interview, because that's when the Officer Bill of Rights kicks in, of course. But this is just so that an employee, a member of the bargaining unit, can get a copy of any statement that they have given. 28.7.
While the investigation's ongoing or after it's completed, because after it's completed, it's public record.
Correct, yeah.
While it's going on, I don't know that we could give those out.
Well, this is not related necessarily to an ongoing investigation, my understanding. This is just if you give a statement in the line of duty, right, gentlemen? And we're just saying, it may not even be an IA. There may not even be an investigation ongoing, is what I'm saying. I mean, if
Well, that would be public record as far as this.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to
What-
say unless there's an open active investigation, I mean, we would consider maybe that exception if there's an open and active investigation. Just make some of that.
Yeah, I mean, public records law, but I get what you're looking for.
28.7 is, it deals with body worn cameras. I can only surmise maybe this has been, this comes out of policy. And I guess it's already in policy that the BWCs will not be used or monitored randomly for the purpose of seeking to find policy violations, but can be viewed in connection with an internal or external complaint.
And when the new body cameras, you can actually, I guess, remote in and live view as well.
And then
Mike in, did you say?
Mic in and live view.
with the new cameras, and there's also GPS capability on the new cameras. That we might need to amend that with that new verbiage when the cameras come in.
And then I guess the big one for us is we've touched on it already, is just on the grievances and arbitration procedure. We're proposing under 29.4 that the union member in a step one would first present it to their lieutenant or sergeant. Again, here's 10 working days referenced. And then the lieutenant or sergeant would answer the grievance within that same 10 working day period. For a second, there's some language being proposed to be stricken where it says in case of a group of employees, the grievance will be identified. You want to explain the rationale?
Sorry, where's that?
I'm on page 54
The top.
at the top where it says in case of a group of employees.
So that'd be like a class action
Yeah.
grievance. If it's on behalf of the entire bargaining unit, I would have to identify every single bargaining unit member. I just think that's a lot of extra work for everyone to include everyone's name on that. If it's included for the entire bargaining unit, that should just be included.
I hear you, but I've seen contracts that just say, or grievances, that just say class action grievance. And our problem from management is we just don't know who you really mean by that. And we just,
Well, it'd be
sometimes,
spelled out in the language of the grievance,
What
the
if-
actual
Yeah.
but it's
narrative.
for purposes of clarity for us to try to deal with a grievance and hopefully resolve it before it goes any further. It's best to know who you're talking about as opposed to just it's a class action grievance. I think that's the reason why I like it in there. I actually have contracts with a little more spelled out in terms of when you say class action, who are you talking about and that sort of thing. So I've just seen them where you say, this is an overtime class action grievance. Well, who's been affected? Who didn't get overtime? It's easier for us so we can investigate it and hopefully resolve it. I think that's the only reason why it's in there.
What if we, maybe a compromise might be if it truly involves the entire union, we would say that, but if it involves 5 employees or 10,
Some subgroup.
Yeah,
Those
that'd be
need-
better than
those-
90.
those
I could probably live with that.
Yeah.
If you just say it's the whole unit, then we know who it is.
Like-
You don't have to write their all.
like if it's a policy change that the whole union feels like impacts everybody,
Yeah.
then we would call that a true class action.
If it's a subgroup, then they just need
Okay.
to identify who it is. I could live with that.
And the proposal on step 2, this may already be who the immediate supervisor or shift commander is, but we're saying make it expressly say lieutenant or sergeant, and then it goes to the captain. So these are major changes here, we believe. Now, the big one that we are proposing in good faith, and this was, you and I spoke this morning, Wayne, and you kind of candidly shared that you think the union or the management wants to go away from binding arbitration
For discipline.
for discipline. The union is willing to agree, and the old contract had a loser pays provision for attorney's fees. That's if the arbitrator, this one was even a little unusual, as we found out in one of our arbitrations. It says if the arbitrator makes a determination of a winner, then it's a loser pays. Because I think one, we just got news of today that I wasn't involved in, but IUPA was involved in, where the arbitrator clearly split it. And under the old contract, they could split it, but it also still provided that ability of the arbitrator to shift all the fees to one side. The union's proposing, we're okay with even in writing saying it will be a straight 50-50 split. If that's a concern of the city, that they don't like arbitration in part because of the potential costs of arbitration. We understand that. Where the union feels very strongly about it is, yes, you have civil service rules. And I was going through those because Wayne said, well, a member will still get due process. Well, they have to get due process, meaning opportunity to sit before the captain or the lieutenant or the chief. If you go by your civil service rules, though, if that's in lieu of arbitration, that's not really a fair process because your current city process says that the city, it says that the Civil Service Board can merely make a recommendation to the city manager. And the city manager is then free to reject that. Here it is. It's under Chapter 6 of your Civil Service Rules, 6.11, subparagraph C. The city manager may accept in full, modify, or completely reject the Civil Service Board's advisory opinion. So what the heck good is that for a member? They get terminated. They go before a Civil Service Board. Let's say the Civil Service Board even says, oh, they shouldn't have been terminated. City manager can still reject that. So, and we have a current city manager who has told us that he backs the police chief. He's told us that. And he hasn't shown us any other position except backing the police chief. So,
I think he's deviated a couple times at least.
well, we offered a deviation in Jovanovich that would have cost the city far less money than it did, and he rejected it. And
Well, I'm just for the record, I think
but I'm talking about totally disagreeing with the chief.
He deviated one time, but I think, that was,
And that was a non-IUPA person, wasn't it?
that was our guy, that was Sluter's 5 days.
Sluter.
Yeah.
Gave him a 5-day
I
suspension.
just-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so he's one time he is deviated from the chief. But our experience, the experience of the members is that the way things are presently set up, it's just not a fair process. And frankly, a city manager, my opinion from doing this for 30 years, an unbiased neutral is what an arbitrator is. That's who should be deciding these things. Your city manager has other things to do. He or she shouldn't be deciding ultimately discipline within a police department, in my opinion. Almost every collective bargaining agreement we have, there's one that Orange City, Little Orange City, goes before the city manager. Almost all the other ones that we know of, DeLand, New Smyrna, that Wayne just negotiated, they have arbitration. Daytona. I say this to you, I wanted to say it to you face to face to get you to understand the terrible signal you'll be sending on hiring and retention. In part because Article 14 of your lieutenant's contract, I know, Wayne, you may not have been involved in it, but it doesn't matter. These people working under lieutenants see that their lieutenants get arbitration. Why should they not get it? Why should there be discrimination at the level of everybody below lieutenant to get arbitration? Why? Jamie, you, I guess, were negotiating for the city and agreed to this. You were okay with it for the lieutenants. Why aren't you okay with it? Why are you letting Wayne say you're not okay with it for these men and women?
Can I respond to that?
You can, but I want to finish and then tell me everything you've got. But
You finish and I'll respond.
you've set something in stone now with the lieutenants. If you weren't going to do it for these men and women below the rank of lieutenant, then you shouldn't have agreed to it for them. Your firefighters get it, or are going to get it. Their carryover PBA contract has it. or they'll go to impasse over it from what we're hearing. So, and I cannot stress enough from going around this county with Greg just about every time at the table, and these other bargaining units have it. Port Orange is going to stick out like a sore thumb if you don't have it. And it's just due process. Is the city so afraid to want to follow its own rules that they don't want to trust themselves in front of an unbiased neutral and arbitrator, a man or woman who can hear the case and not have a vested interest like the city manager or even the civil service board? Why? Why not? I mean, if you truly want to afford due process, if you truly want to give your officers a fair shot, then let them go before an arbitrator. We might not have had a Rain situation like we just heard about today. We wouldn't have had a Jovanovic situation, we know that. And other disciplinary cases that are going to come up. If you had a track record, aside from the one time, of a city manager that was not in lockstep with your police chief, we might feel otherwise. But you don't have that. We haven't seen that. And Wayne, you haven't been involved in that very much for the last 2 years. I have, last year and a half, since November of 19. Port Orange kept me busier than pretty much every other agency because of the mess they had going on in this department of PBA ranked lieutenants primarily fighting to keep PBA in and thumbing down IUPA. Thankfully, we're past that. They've been voted out. But if you want to start on a good slate, you agreed to it with the PBA. Ask yourselves, look yourselves in the mirror and say, why won't you agree to it now? If you've had your nose bloodied a couple times by arbitrators, as Wayne will tell you, he's got more years doing this than I do. I've done it for 30. He's done it longer than I have. You win some, you lose some. We'll lose some too. But I feel like, and I can say this with all sincerity, I think you're making a decision because of these last two arbitrations. And that's not right. That's not fair. And I can tell you, I think these people are going to make sure your council knows about that. If you keep them from getting what the lieutenants in this department are getting, if you keep them from getting what your fire department is going to get, if you keep them from getting what 95% in Volusia County is getting, you're going to hurt retention and recruitment. Your recruiter is going to have to say, well, we'll bring you on here, but you could be fired at will and little to no recourse. You'll go before the city manager, but his decision stands. Oh, we have a civil service board. Wayne mentioned that this morning. This is not worth the paper it's written on. It's really not, because it says the city manager can disregard it. Where's the fairness in that? Any rational person would tell you that's not a fair alternative. We're offering you a fair alternative, and we're not going to make another one. We're telling you we'll split arbitration costs with you. We will go to war over this. Mark my words, because I'm hearing it from them. If we have to go to PERC over this, we will. And I don't think PERC's going to look kindly on the fact that you've got it for your lieutenants. And you all know it in your hearts that that's not right, to now try to tell them no. Tell me with a straight face. Wayne's going to try to, but tell me with a straight face that's fair. And Wayne may not have been involved in this, and he's probably saying, darn it, damn, how did y'all let that slip pass? I wouldn't have gone for that. Because he's told me his philosophy on arbitration. He doesn't like an arbitrator getting the ability to say, yeah, you may have violated the policy, but I think the discipline was too severe. Well, you know what? That's the beauty of having an independent, unbiased person, because they can look at the big picture. They can say, is this person irredeemable where they shouldn't get another chance? Or did they screw up and they should get their job back and get suspended for 30 or 40 days or whatever the case may be, short of termination? That's what we're talking about. And in a day and age when it's getting harder to find men and women to go in law enforcement, to take this away is cutting the legs out from under your recruiters and going to seriously undermine the morale of the department. Am I correct? Will this undermine the morale of the department?
I'd like to add that, unlike the garbage men we've been compared to in the police department, I think it's imperative to know that these IAs are career enders. They take somebody's certification, you're not gonna go be a cop somewhere else. You're done. You're done being a cop. It's not a garbage man. A garbage man can go to the next place and be a sanitation worker somewhere else. I've seen multiple careers ended over this. And you're gonna have, without the just cause, you're gonna have a friends and family plan where discipline is issued on, do I like you or do I not like you? And I think we can all attest that that is absolutely imperatively unfair, un-American. And I don't know why we would even be talking about that. Because if one guy does one thing and the guy does the very same thing, you're telling me that if the chief thinks that, oh, I don't like this guy, and that's who we're gonna terminate, but it's okay because the city manager can decide. Fundamentally unfair.
Oh, and by the way, I'm told that when you negotiated for the PBA, you didn't bring it up. You didn't have an issue with it that I'm going to hear from Wayne in just a moment. You were apparently okay with it. You were okay with accepting the lieutenants. Now, is that favoritism towards the lieutenants? You got more friends there with the lieutenants? You like the lieutenants better? You like the fact that they used to be PBA and now we're IUPA and we're the redheaded stepchild? I don't know. But I can only tell you that's the perception that they feel, is that, hey, we won the election fair and square. As our former president used to say, elections have consequences. Well, one of the consequences is we want the same thing. And the consequence shouldn't be that we don't get something as fundamental as due process. And your city manager, by the way, is appointed, not elected. So even if he makes a bad decision, the citizens can't vote his butt out. He's appointed by your council. So he can run his own fiefdom until and unless he does something terrible enough, the city council decides to fire him. And that's the person that we think is who has no police experience. No police, he'll tell you about his Navy experience all the time because he does every time I've been before him. He's proud of that. But he doesn't know anything about policing. And he's going to sit in judgment of one of these men and women and determine their fate? No, that's why I like arbitration, because you can even request an arbitrator with labor experience. You can request an arbitrator with police case experience. You can request an arbitrator that is used to handling police cases and understands use of force, excessive force, insubordination in a police environment or not. And it's just ludicrous to me to think in 2020, with all we've seen on TV, that we would, your side of the table would even think that that's a plausible, agreeable proposal. But I tell you what, it now makes sense what Wayne was telling me when you told me that you're against the Officer Bill of Rights even being in there. I mean, my God, that's the elephant in the room. You don't even want the Bill of Rights to be in the contract. Of course you wouldn't want something as fair as an arbitration process.
We've had problems with the investigation with following the Bill of Rights.
We do. It's an ongoing battle because Wayne says there's teeth in it. I can tell you just the opposite. I think management people, by and large, I've had an attorney tell me, go for it on the law enforcement in Osceola County. There's no teeth in it. They know there's no teeth in it. Unless and until lobbyists for these various police unions get our legislators in Tallahassee to put some monetary fines and sanctions and penalties, it's going to remain that way. They'll know they can trample on an officer's Bill of Rights. Who really thinks in this room that calling a timeout and saying, I want a new investigator is worth anything?
We've run into problems in the past because the police chiefs get together and they won't let their people participate in that compliance review board. That was an issue with South Daytona. They couldn't get the compliance review. So it's real travesty.
It really is, and the Officer Bill of Rights has been modified and amended slightly about 2 or 3 times. You could go to court and get an injunction. Can't do that now. Wayne thinks you can. It's not in the statute, though.
I didn't say that.
You said you think there's things you can do with court. You can't do anything in court with the
You got
Officer
a
Bill of
compliance
Rights.
review board is what I said. I didn't say anything about a court here.
But how do you compel that? If as you've heard, and we've run into a chief says, nah, what can you do? There's no mechanism in the statute that says I can go get an injunction and force a police chief to do this. That's what I'm saying. The statute has had some revisions, but it still is woefully short. It's clumsy. It's really irrelevant for a large part because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. I will say most departments, at least now, we've even had a few in Volusia County that didn't want to have the sworn attestation at the end and notarized. It's supposed to be attested and notarized. Oh, we did one, but we didn't do the other. Well, you're supposed to, it's a felony. But I get passionate about this because I've been doing it for so long and I've seen enough abuses of the Officer Bill of Rights over the years to hear Wayne say, well, I have great respect for it. Nah, we don't want the Officer Bill of Rights even mentioned in the collective bargaining agreement. Greg's absolutely right. We want it in there, and we're going to fight for that too, because it's in almost every contract that I'm involved with. And two, you can grieve it then. If it's not in the contract, you can't grieve it. It has to be in there. And you know what? The last thing I'll say, it keeps everybody honest. If it's in the contract, why should Wayne be opposed to it? He's going to tell me, but why? If you have faith in your rank of your supervisors in the department to not violate the Officer Bill of Rights, then why are you afraid to put it in? The not wanting to put it in tells me you're afraid that they won't follow it, and you don't want to hold them accountable. Having it in there permits them to hold them accountable by grieving it, as opposed to having to go down this archaic, silly statute that says, oh, Mr. John Doe, you're violating my rights. Well, how am I violating your rights? Well, you didn't let me review all statements before you turned on the tape recorder and started questioning. Well, I think I did give you time to review them all. And then you get in this pissing match with an IA investigator. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that.
And Gary, the compliance review board, even if they determined there was some issue, it goes right back into IA and the police chief is investigating.
Yeah, so put yourself, you guys are city employees, you two are, put yourself in the shoes if you were on our side of the table, their side of the table. You know you would want this in there if it was your job with some assurances to be afforded, some safeguards so that you can't just be exited out the door without some assurance that something that's in statute is followed. So we feel passionate on Article 7, the Bill of Rights being in. We also believe that arbitration, we're making a concession to take away the loser pays provision. And, that's something we wouldn't have to give away. And what we're asking for in return, our quid pro quo here, is that you put it back and that you leave it in, just as you have it for the lieutenants. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they wanted to say? Did I mischaracterize the passion for your side of the table for this?
No. Great argument.
Well, all I can tell you, Gary, is that we think the arbitration system for discipline is flawed. There's no question that arbitrators, since they are appointed with the consent of both parties, that they definitely have an interest in influencing their decisions in terms of trying to make both parties happy. I frankly think, in my own experience, and you're right, I've been doing it for 40 years, I've seen arbitrators basically keep tab sheets on who they ruled for before and influence their decisions in that way. They do a lot of splitting the baby, where they try to make both parties happy. In a typical termination case, they might say, put them back to work and give them back pay or something like that, thinking that maybe both sides will now be happy with that. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. They should not be influenced by that. Arbitrators should be listening to both parties' positions and making an unbiased decision. And my experience is recently is that they're just getting away from that. It's a flawed system. If arbitrators truly would sit down and look at each party's positions and make a decision one way or another, not influenced by whether they're going to make somebody happy or somebody unhappy, or whether they're going to be able to retain themselves in future cases or anything like that, I'd be fine with the system. But that's not the way it works. It just isn't. And it's a flawed system. The city is fine with having some kind of system. We're open for discussion about some other kind of system. You mentioned all these other jurisdictions that have binding arbitration for discipline. And yes, there are. But there are also a number of jurisdictions that have other kinds of mechanisms. I'll give you an example. Orange County Sheriff's Office. They have a system whereby they don't have binding arbitration for discipline, They instead, after discipline is imposed, they go through various steps of the chain of command. And if it's continued to be contested, they have a system whereby the employee chooses somebody to be on a board, the employer chooses someone, and the two of them choose a third party. And I'm not suggesting that today as some sort of alternative, but I am saying that there are entities in Florida, law enforcement entities, that have other systems where they have people involved who know the agency, who know law enforcement, who know the kinds of issues, the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights, the due process protections, that sort of thing. You can't tell me that these arbitrators that come in from Cleveland and from New York know what the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights is all about, what a law enforcement agency in Florida, what their restrictions are. They don't. They just don't. They're not familiar with those kinds of things. It drives me crazy. So there's other systems out there that I think can guarantee what your officers are looking for. They have protections under the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights. I know you're not listening to me when I say I think there's some teeth to them. In your opinion, there isn't, but in my opinion, there is. They have due process protections. I mean, there is case law out there with plenty of protections for your officers in terms of due process. When they're disciplined, they're entitled to pre-disciplinary due process and some sort of post-disciplinary due process mechanism. So it's not like they're out there completely barren of rights.
Well, they're following the Constitution.
Let me talk, okay? How about you? So they have those kinds of protections under statute and under constitutional protections and in case law. So it's not like they're out there completely without any protection. The arbitration system is flawed, in my opinion. And you said go to PERC. Well, have at it. If you want to go to PERC, that's fine. But you are aware that there's case law that says that PERC is bound by. It says an employer is not required to agree to the process of binding arbitration for discipline. So I don't know what PERC would do for you. I don't know that they would have the ability even or desire to change that case law. So if you wanted to go to PERC, that's fine. Sure, we agreed to it with the lieutenants and firefighters have it too, but who knows what we'll do with them down the road. It's possible we may change that as well. It's just hard. We don't know. We're not negotiating at this point. So I'm just saying to you that the process of arbitration for discipline is flawed. And we're looking for other kinds of ways to afford some protections. Maybe civil service is, in your view, flawed as well. I don't know. But we don't have any problem with talking about a particular system, maybe that's a substitute for it. And we may suggest one too. But that's our rationale for what we're doing. It's not like we're trying to strip the officers of some protections. We think they're there. We're willing to talk some more about it.
Just briefly.
Can I respond? Yeah, go ahead.
What I heard you say was your two primary issues with the arbitration system is that they don't have any law enforcement experience, the arbitrators.
Some of them don't.
Right.
Some
And
do,
that-
some don't.
And two, that you don't like the way that they are selected, right? By each party agreeing to that. So it sounds like the actual arbitration system, you don't have the actual binding arbitration ruling, you don't have an issue with. So maybe what we can work on instead of getting rid of binding arbitration as a whole is work on the mechanisms to get who we pick as an arbitrator. That sounds like to me the issue that you've just presented.
I hear you. I just don't know if there's another way to do it. I've seen other ways where they're just like a permanent panel put into a contract or something like that. But those are difficult to agree to.
It's the binding part that is critical.
Well, it's the part too about the arbitrators knowing that they have to keep both parties happy in order to continue being arbitrators. If you have an arbitrator that rules in favor of the unions every time, there's no way they're going to be selected. And they know that. If they have an arbitrator, you have an arbitrator that rules in favor of management all the time, they're not going to get selected. The unions are going to scratch them every single time. Arbitrators know that. So in my view, they keep score sheets. I know they do. I'm not an arbitrator. I don't think I ever will be. I don't think I could be a good But I know these arbitrators sit down and they say, okay, well, I think I've ruled in favor of the employer too many times this time. I think I'm gonna better do something for the union. And that taints their judgment. It really does. And that bothers me. It's not like having a fair and impartial person sitting up there. They're influenced by who it is that selects them.
Well,
That's my
so again, the problem is with the arbitrator, not the arbitration process.
No, it's a byproduct of the process.
Like-
It's not the person themselves. They can't help it. They know that they've got to keep both parties happy just by virtue of the process. So it's
Wow.
not a particular person.
Out of the 2 arbitrations we've been to, did the arbitrator with Ivanovich make you guys happy?
No, of course it didn't.
I mean,
Absolutely
So-
not. No.
he didn't play to either side. He heard the arguments on both sides, and he made his decision off of that. That's not a
I
flawed
could-
system.
No, who knows how many arbitrations he's had in the last couple of years and how many times he's ruled in favor of management. Maybe he's said to it in this particular one, you know what? My last 2, I've ruled in favor of management. So in order for me to keep getting picked, I better do something for the union. Who knows? I'm not
I know.
accusing him of that. but
Or
that
the
happens.
merits of the case.
But
and he hadn't supported
But you
it.
and I agreed on Carlos, the arbitrator in that case.
I
You,
don't dispute that.
you were all in on saying he would be fair, impartial. Here's what I want to say. Wayne, were you involved in the lieutenant's contract?
No.
Okay. Here's,
But that's it, Gary. I mean, I hear your point, but we're not going to sit here and debate the merits of what we did or didn't do in the lieutenant's contract.
but I'm going to respond to something you just said. You said, yeah, the lieutenants may have gotten it, but maybe something we look at down the road.
Okay.
This is recent. This is the
I get that.
20 to
I
23
don't dispute that,
contract.
Gary. I don't dispute
And
that.
and here's what it speaks volumes of. We gave the PBA something they wanted for the lieutenants, but we're not going to give it to IOPA for the lower rank and file officers.
And when you were just.
It had nothing to do with PBA versus IUPA.
Well, that's what it looks like on paper.
It may to you, I don't know, but I can tell you it didn't.
But when
It
you were
has nothing to do
negotiating,
with that.
when Jamie was negotiating with the PBA for our contract, just before we got
You have the
voted
same
in,
lady at the table
that
that
wasn't,
was at the table
that
with
wasn't brought
PBA.
up.
I have been to the table with FOP, with PBA, with IUPA, with you name it,
Well, tell us
And-
why
and-
PBA got it.
always.
But that wasn't
Why
brought
did
up.
PBA get it and we don't?
Well, maybe. Could be any number of reasons, but we may
No,
go down the road.
Wayne,
It's not because you guys.
This is your decision. Yes, it is, because she was fine. with
Gary,
it.
you can, if you're gonna start getting accusatory and throwing out names.
Well,
and
would you
stuff,
deny
then
it? Is this your decision?
We're not gonna sit here with an inquisition and start
I'm just
answering
asking you,
questions
yes or
for
no? Was this your decision?
Look, Gary, I'm not answering that question. I'm talking about this set of negotiations. I don't care about.
If
other
we were talking about a
negotiations.
different department, Wayne, I would be on board with you, but you can't in good conscience look at me and tell me the fairness. I don't care that you weren't involved. She was, he was. You're the only new player.
Gary,
Wayne, you're the only new player, right?
if you're gonna continue down this road and start getting
I
accusatory.
think we know the answer because you won't
We're not
answer it.
gonna.
You were the only new
We're
player.
not gonna continue these negotiations.
You're the only
if
new
you
player.
Keep at that.
I think it speaks volumes, and everybody on the camera saw that. You're the only new player.
We can agree to disagree on things. I'm gonna do it and do it in a professional way. When you start pointing fingers.
I'm not pointing fingers, I'm pointing out facts.
I'm not gonna answer
Okay.
your questions.
Now, I want to ask you about something else you said. You said that the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights and the Civil Service Board is a Of course, they have to give due process. Any first-year law student in con law knows procedural due process for public employees means they get a pre-disciplinary hearing and a post-disciplinary hearing. You know what our courts say, Wayne, and I know you do, the 11th Circuit and the Supreme Court? That just means they get to come and sit before the chief, and he could be twiddling his thumbs up for all they care. That's the minimal due process that is required, is that they get a chance to go and say, chief or captain or lieutenant, I shouldn't be terminated, here's why. That's their due process, is to tell their side of the story. What we're talking about is a review mechanism that is fair. You mentioned a complaint review board. I'm well aware of the Orange County process that the sheriff has had for years. If you guys want to propose something like that, give us a fair proposal. If you're talking about they get to select an officer, the chief selects an officer, and the two select a third. What it would have to involve, though, is that they would have the binding ability to override the chief's decision. If you're proposing something like that, now we're talking that's something we can at least consider. But if it's a quote advisory board, like the Civil Service Board is here in Port Orange, that's not fair. And Wayne, you would have to admit that that civil service, you'd have to admit this civil service process is not worth the paper it's written on. It's not.
We're willing to continue to talk and we'll propose something.
Okay. And what I meant by going to PERC is obviously, I mean, if we declare impasse over this, if we declare impasse over the Bill of Rights issue and the discipline and grievance article, then impasse is the only next step.
With the ability of the city council to
Yeah.
impose that. if they want.
Yeah. We hope it doesn't go there.
We hope it doesn't either.
And one last thing on this other process, I like what you said. If there's an idea of, if Wayne, if it's the Cleveland out of state, we've all dealt with arbitrators that fly in, they're snowbirds that have a second residence in Florida and they like to come down and do an arbitration here through AAA or FMCS, Federal Mediation Conciliation Service. If we want to think, okay.
Only in wintertime.
Yeah, only winter. If we want to go forward and say arbitrators have to be from the state of Florida, and we have to agree on an arbitrator that has heard police cases or has police experience, and that we would not use the same arbitrator a second time. Those are ways, constructive ways around the concerns that you just raised. You don't like the fact that an arbitrator is thinking, oh, I've got to make sure I balance out my ledger sheet of finding one time for the union and one time. If we all agree, we won't reuse the same arbitrator. We all agree it's got to be someone from the state of Florida. I mean, there's ways we can
Yeah.
tweak.
Well, I hear you, but I don't think that's gonna, because it's, when they balance their ledger sheet, it's not necessarily with us, it's with somebody else.
But you know, Wayne, why do our courts, why does the federal court system and our state judges love arbitration? They are promoting, our Florida bar is promoting arbitration. You're on the Florida bar committees. They love arbitration. And I'm a mediator and I've taken the arbitration course as well. They want that because they know it's faster, it's less expensive, and you get a resolution. Right now, as you know, Wayne, even under the civil service rule, we would have the right, all it says is the decision of the city manager shall be final and the employee shall have no further right of administrative appeal. We could still appeal that to the circuit court on what's called a writ of certiorari to review this. We don't want to do that, but that's the door that's still left open, even with your civil service process, by having the city manager receiving an advisory opinion from the Civil Service Board that he can reject, accept, or tweak and modify. And then we're left with having to go to court. It's an appellate review standard, as Wayne knows, and Matt probably does as well. It's an appellate review standard, but that then drives up. Then we're talking about you guys spending more money through Wayne to come and argue against the writ of certiorari. So he may like that, but that's the
Recorder's on, I didn't say anything.
But when you know that the writ of cert is an avenue
You're
that we
on
could
video,
do.
though. Where? Oh, really?
But Wayne, you know the writ of cert is something.
Yeah.
But
We beat this horse to death.
But-
That's good.
so let's schedule our next meeting, and we've given you guys a lot of articles. We would hope that the next meeting would be you guys coming back with some
Yeah, we
responses.
we actually have some things drafted up, we just got sidetracked today, so.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll definitely come back with stuff next time.
Okay. You want to
How
propose
did
some
we
dates?
set it up last time? Did we get our calendars out, or did you just send me dates? I think
I
you sent me
sent you dates, but
ahead,
we have
send me.
enough people here if you want to. If you need to get back and check your calendar, that's fine.
How long do you guys need to review all that?
I don't know, we've got a lot to digest here, and we've got some others on, so I'll tell you what, just send me dates that
Okay.
you and your team can meet, and I'll do like I did last time.
Okay.
Pick one or two.
Do you realistically think you want to get together, say, before Thanksgiving? I mean, we're heading into
Yes.
this. Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's only,
Not
what,
next
3
week,
weeks
but
away.
2 weeks?
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks or,
Okay,
yeah, we definitely want to get together.
16th to the 20th?
okay. Because I know from Thanksgiving to Christmas, it's going to get tight for everybody.
The only day I could do it there is the 19th. I'm in the class
19th.
16, 17, 18.
You and I are in a full day arbitration in DeLand that day. There's your arbitration.
They should get rid of it.
And I teed you up for
That's
that.
a funny one because they didn't follow the police officer's own rights. There you go.
Greg wrote the grievance on that. No, okay, why don't we get on?
Maybe the week of Thanksgiving. You know, I know Thanksgiving is a Thursday and people are generally slow then, but I'm around.
I know that Monday's the 23rd, Tuesday's the 24th. I've got something on the 25th. I don't think many people will be around the day.
No,
before.
that's usually a dead day. If you're talking about Wednesday.
Yeah. So maybe that Tuesday.
Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday the 24th? Tuesday the 24th?
No.
Tuesday the
We're
24th.
working and I'm not really sure, but,
Can you zoom in or no?
well, I don't know if we have an emergency during the middle of the meetings. I gotta
Is that Monday instead of the 23rd?
That Monday's,
They're working that day.
go. Monday, Tuesday.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. And it's day shift. If we were still on, that's
How
our
about-
first week back.
does
on
Friday
days.
the 20th work? That was a day that Benton and I were talking about, just now not gonna happen on our case.
Right.
I know Fridays.
No, we're.
The other guys.
Let's just go back to what,
Yeah,
you
we
just send me
work
the
the
dates and we'll pick
the
one
night
out.
of the 19th.
Figure it out.
And again, I knew that today was gonna probably be a spirited discussion. I hope you understand. We're all just doing our jobs here.
I'm fine with spirited discussions.
I know you're doing what you think you need to do for your side. Obviously, we're doing what our members feel is needed on our side to be fair and competitive. Okay?
Understood. No worries.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Did anybody, you guys have any questions or anything? Anybody? All done? Okay. Everybody's voted. You just got a few hours.